Hi, in this video I'm going to show you some of the exciting new features we have in the IBM Copy Services Manager 6.2.3 release. So it's just announced, and we have some features that we think you're going to enjoy quite a bit. So I'm going to give you a quick product overview, and then we'll jump into what's new. So again, what is CSM? CSM is a one-stop shop for your advanced copy services on your block storage systems. We support all the IBM storage system products, DS8000, Spectrum products, and we install on all the available platforms from Windows to Linux to ZOS itself, and we run on the DS8000 HMC. So hopefully if you're watching this video, you're already familiar with Copy Services Manager, you like Copy Services Manager, and so what I'm going to show you next is some of the new features that we have in 6.2.3. Here's a high-level view of them, just so you get a quick screenshot, but I'll walk through each one of these individually. All right, the first one, this was a customer request we were able to get in. It's the ability to synchronize the ZOS host connection certificates from the active to the standby server. So what happens? What does this mean? Well, when you create a host connection from CSM to ZOS system, we allow you to create an IP connection to the ZOS system, so you don't have to be running CSM right on the ZOS system. But in order for that connection to be secure, you have to provide a connection certificate. So we've always had that ability. We allow that import ZOS connection certificate. You can set up that connection certificate and import it, and it will use that to make that secure connection. Problem in previous releases has been that the standby server, when you set up that standby server connection, it does not get the certificate, and so you have to go and manually apply that certificate yourself on the standby server. So what we've done in this release is we've made it so that as soon as you add it to the active side, it'll send that over to the standby side along with the host connection information, and the standby server should be able to connect to the ZOS host system right away. No issues. You don't have to apply any manual certificate on that server at all. So this should make your life a lot easier. If you don't have the active standby yet set up yet, and you already set up your host connection, when you do set up a standby server, it'll send that certificate over and add it as well. So you're good, you should be good to go. So again, hopefully this will make your lives a lot easier and skip an extra step that we've been having you do prior to this release. All right, so next we have some enhancements to our scheduled tasks. As you know, hopefully in our 6.2.2 release, we've made some additional enhancements to a scheduled task as well, making the scheduled tasks much more like a script, so you can add commands to multiple actions or commands within a single scheduled task that may manipulate multiple sessions as well. So when you create that scheduled task in 6.2.3, we've added the ability to no longer have to specify an actual schedule. So there were customers that liked the feature, the fact that you could create multiple commands and multiple actions in a scheduled task, but they didn't really want to schedule it through the CSM schedule. They didn't want to set a schedule and run it accordingly. They wanted to either run it manually, so in other words, use this as like it would a set of CLI scripts, or they wanted to run it via a batch job, BPX batch or something on Z, which would execute these sets of commands remotely. So that brings me to the third bullet, which is another new feature in this release, is we added a new CLI command called runTask. What runTask does is it takes a task ID, which you can get from the new ls tasks CLI command, gives you the task ID, you should run task ID, and it will do the run. So now you can set up BPX batch, do your CLI scripting, call runTask, and run the set of actions through your batch instead of through a scheduled timer event on CSM. And last is if you did set a schedule and you were doing the batch job technique, then what we did on hour schedules before is it always started at the top of the hour. So no matter what you did, if you set it for 2 hour increment, it would start at the top of the hour and then do every 2 hours. Customers wanted a little more flexibility because they wanted to stagger some of their scheduled tasks. So some of their scheduled tasks are similar. They may be flashing once at noon, once at 12:15, once at 12:30, and so they wanted to be able to stagger it. And so what we did is, at the time that you actually enable a scheduled task, it will take the system clock and start the timer at that point. So if I started my scheduled task at 12:10 and set it to hourly increments to run hourly, it'll run at 12:10, 1:10, 2:10, 3:10, etc. So hopefully that gives customers a little more flexibility in being able to set when their schedule's going to run and stagger multiple schedules. All right, the next one I'm going to talk about is our foresight support. So this is very exciting for me. It's a really nice solution. We have customers adding on 4 sites. I mean, you thought 3 sites were complicated. Well, now you're adding customers that have 4 sites. And so we're adding a 4-site session into the mix in order to be able to manage that environment in a single session. So we can do it now in multiple sessions. There's a white paper out there that is really excellently wrote by Thomas Luther. But it has some, you do have to do some manipulation between sessions, making it a little bit difficult to implement. This session type does the same stuff that's in that white paper, but does it all in a single session, making it much easier for a customer to switch their sites and manage the environment. So what it is as you can see, it has 4 separate sites, and it's designed to be completely symmetrical. And so what that means is you have basically your 2 regions. You have your site 1, site 2 in one region, site 3, site 4 in another region, where site 1 and site 2 give you that local high availability, potentially using HyperSwap. Site 3, site 4 give you that remote high availability if you were to switch over there, potentially using HyperSwap as well. So I'm not just going to talk through it. I'm going to actually show you a quick demo. Here I have CSM. Here's my 4-site session. I'm going to drill into that. You can see it's a live session now. So from site 1 to site 2, I'm running Metro Mirror. So I have 0 RPO right there. Everything I've written on H1 gets written to H2 before returning to the caller. And then I have my remote global mirror from H1 to H3 depicted by the longer arrow here. And now what's different between this and other multi-target sessions is that now I also have from H3 to H4 a global copy relationship. So all the data that's sent from H1 to H3 is now sent from H3 to H4 as well. So now I have my 4-site populated there. So as I mentioned, H1, H2, kind of like my local region, H3, H4 is my remote region, but all 4 data centers have a copy of that data that's going on. So the first thing I want to show you is one thing this provides is kind of an ability to use that 4th site as a practice. So I'm going to go into the session here. I'm going to say suspend. I'm going to suspend my H1, H3 leg. That's my global mirror leg. And what this does is it makes the H3, it uses pause with consistency on the DS8000. It makes the H3 site 3 consistent. Now that he's suspended partial, you'll see that the H1, H2 relationship's still mirroring, so I still have my DR capability on H2. Now I'm going to issue another suspend command, but I'm going to do it to the 3 to 4 leg. So now I have H3, H4. It's draining all the data from 3 to 4 to make sure it's consistent. And then once everything's drained, it will do the actual suspension. You'll see now it's suspended partial again. And H4 has a consistent set of the data. So now I can go back in here, issue a start GM H1, H3. Get this guy up and going again. He goes back to a preparing state here in a minute. Start copying H1 to H3 data. And in a second, he'll actually start forming consistency groups with global mirror. But you'll see that H3 to H4 is still disconnected. There is no relationship going between H3 and H4. So I can I can IPL off H4, do my practice, do whatever I need to do forensics on the data, whatever I need. But I'm still DR capable in both H1, H2, and H1, H3. So now I'm done doing all my testing. All I have to do is start it back up, start GC, H3, H4. He resyncs H3 to H4, and now I have my full 4-site solution back and going again. So now I want to show you what I mean by symmetrical. So I'm going to suspend the entire session from the site 1. That's going to suspend both the H1, H2 leg and the H1, H3 leg. It's suspended. Now I can go in and issue my recover command. From recover, it was running on site 1. From recover, I have the option now to recover to H2. And you can see if I recovered at H2, from H2 I can go 2 to 1 back, or 2 to 3 with that 3 to 4 leg still going. Or I can go to the remote site, recover at H3, and have the option to global mirror H3 back to H1 and metro mirror H3 to H4. So I'm going to show you that remote thing. So I'm doing a full sites region swap, I guess you could call it. I'm going to swap to H3, do recover H3. He did all the recover for the global mirror leg. Now H3 is going. You'll see that H3, H4 is still in global copy mode. So now I can simply issue a start. Whoop, I forgot. I got to confirm that I moved to site 3. And now I can issue a start from that site. So, and I have my choice. I can just start the H3, H4 leg in metro mirror mode. I can just start 3 to 1 in global mirror mode. I can do any various things. So I'm going to show you piecemeal. So I'm going to start H3, H4. Maybe it was a disaster. H1's still down. I recovered to H3. Now I can get H3, H4 going in metro mirror. So now I have at site 3, I have DR capability to site 4 because now I'm in metro mirror mode. H1 finally comes back up. I issue my start GM H3, H1. He starts going. And in a second here, you'll see he goes prepared. He'll start forming consistency groups from 3 to 1. He's prepared. Now it does give me a warning saying that H1, H3, that H1, H2 is not active. So if I did do a failover, H2 has an older version of the data. So I'm going to take care of that by starting H1, H2 in GC mode. Now that 4-site leg always has to be global copy. You can't do a metro mirror cascaded off the global mirror, but it does get the data primed and ready at the site 2 in this case. So now I'm prepared. I'm good. And just to show you, if I did a suspend here, so now I'm suspending everything from site 2. Fully suspended. If I did a recover, you can see my options are basically the same, just mirrored from the site 1, site 2 case. So I can go recover back to H1, which will give me that H1, H2, H1, H3 config that we were before. Or I could recover to H4, which from H4 I can do H4, H1, H4, H3. So completely symmetrical. No matter which region you're running in, you have the same set of scenarios. So this makes it easier for a lot of customers who may have, one site in New York, one site in London, and have rules and regulations say that they have to run in New York half the year, London the other half of the year, etc. So with this 4-site session, the symmetrical capabilities of this, plus the ease of use of it, we hope that customers will see some definite advantages. All right, so with that, I'm going to go back to my presentation and talk about the next great feature. What is the next great feature? It is support for the DS8000 safeguarded copy solution. What is a safeguarded copy solution? It is a logical corruption protection solution from DS8000. It allows up to 500 backups and provides that cyber resiliency. A lot of customers are they've dealt with the DR stuff, but now they're worried more about cyber attacks and other issues, and maybe not even just external issues, but internal issues as well, where someone corrupts the data, and now if with their traditional DR, that corrupted data gets sent to the remote site, and they don't have a valid copy of the data. So with 500 or so backups, they have the ability to now do forensics, or recover back to a backup from a previous point in time, and handle that through that logical corruption protection through that safeguarded copy solution. So safeguarded copy is only available under the fully licensed version of CSM at this point in time of the making of this video. The only way to manage it through DS8000 is through CSM. So why is this? Well, this helps provide some of that extra security that is needed for a cyber resiliency solution. So you can't go to the DSGUI or the DSCLI and manipulate the backups that get created. Only the people that have access through CSM can do that, manipulate those backups. We do have some future more security features to add to the solution going forward, but this provides a lot of security and that resiliency. I should note that this is provided on all CSM versions, no matter where it's running. However, there may be customer environments where you only have a ZOS connection to the DS8000 storage system. We do not support that at this time in the making of the video. There is an APAR out there to provide that capability. So if you need that, if you only have that ZOS connection, you can apply APAR OABLE 56173 once it's available, and then you should be good to go. Or you can add an HMC connection, and that would allow it as well. And then finally here, what is it in CSM? It is a new session type. It's a 2-volume session type where the host volume, which we label H1, is the volume you want to back up. So you would add those volumes to the session. And the recovery volume is the R1 volume, and that's the volume that you would use to do the actual recovery. So the first thing I want to talk about before I go into the demo for this is where the backups are stored in what we're calling backup capacity for a given volume. This is a non-addressable set of storage. You configure that capacity, but it's not a volume that can be accessed or anything. So it is safe under that volume. You can't delete the volume if there are backups. You can't do anything that would manipulate or lose those backups under that defined backup capacity. So how do you create the backup capacity? You can go to either the DSGUI or the DSCLI. I'm showing you the DSGUI now. You see the volumes by pools. For a given volume, you can bring up the menu and say safeguarded and configure capacity. When you configure capacity, it's going to pull up a little wizard that asks you what you want to configure. You can choose your backup location, the pool for where you want the backup capacity to come from, and then a backup capacity multiplier that works across the volumes that you're defining capacity for. So hopefully very easy. You do have to have that backup capacity on the system, so it does require extra storage, but that should be a given the fact that you're creating extra backups for your data, and a very worthy investment. All right, so this screenshot just shows you you defined it. It's creating the backup capacity. Once it's completed, then you'll see in the volume table where the safeguarded location is, and as well as that virtual capacity that's applied to the volume. Then lastly, I want to show you the DSCLI. Here you can see that it's in the manage CKD or manage FB commands. On the DSCLI, you can set the backup capacity, define the backup capacity, and then the show CKD vol, for example, will show you whether it has safeguarded capacity or not. All right, with that, I'm going to jump into a demo. Here's my safeguarded copy session. I already have it defined and I already have a backup for it. So now I'm going to create a backup. As you can see, I have volumes. Actually, I'll take a step back, show you how to create one. So create session, choose DS8000, choose safeguarded copy, and it's that easy. Just create a session, my SGC. It's going to ask you to launch the add copy sets wizard if you want. You can add volumes, etc. All those volumes that you add need to, the H1 volumes do need to have the backup capacity just described as part of them. So now I have my session. I want to do backup. All I'm going to do is go to commands, backup, and this is how I manually do a backup. I say yes, and it kicks off. Now, I sped this up, but just so you're aware, at the beginning of this release, there is a preparation time. It could take up to 5 minutes to form that backup as we're destaging cache. Should not affect your application I/O, but be aware that the CSM may not return immediately back as it appears in this video for the backup to complete. It will present a message saying we're doing the preparation step, and then it'll do the safeguarded copy backup itself. So you can see it created a new backup down below. The other thing to note is the latest backup. So you have a backup time. It shows you at the time on the CSM server when the backup was attempted or created. The latest backup is going to be considered not recoverable. Why is this? It's because it takes another backup to actually close out the latest backup that was created. So if I was to create another backup at this point, then this backup at 12:22 would become recoverable at that point. Right, so other things to show you, you can define a backup schedule. If I didn't have one, it would say no backup here. So this is another way that you can set up to do backups. If I click on this, it'll take me to the backup schedule itself. So I can show you. If I go in here, this one's set to an hourly schedule of a half-an-hour interval. All it does is issue a backup to the SGC session. So that's my action. It's just a command action set up to the SGC1 session. I'll show you there. Oops, I created a new one. But that's what that one is. If I modify action, you can see that it's that SGC1 session. And then you'll see it runs every half hour. So now if I go back, it's set to scheduled. However, I can do manual backups by clicking that manual backup from there. I do want to point out, though, there are properties associated to the session to provide a little more capabilities. First property is what we call the minimum time frame per backup. So what is this? This will, by default, be 30 minutes. And what it does is it tells the CSM that it will not allow backups more frequently than what you specify there. So if it's set to 30 minutes, I can't go back up at 12 o'clock and then go back at 12:15. My next time I can back up will be 12:30. So why do I do this? Why do we have this capability? It's to provide a little bit more security. If you were to set it to not have a minimum time frame for backup, what could happen is you could get corrupted data and then have a malicious user go and back up continuously until the last known non-corrupted set of data gets rolled off of the hardware because of the capacity or what's allowed to be kept, and so that you would have you could potentially lose your good data. So this gives you that extra security to prevent a malicious user from rolling off your data. The next setting is retention period since your last recoverable backup. What is this? Well, this is the time that CSM will automatically roll off your backup. So if your service level agreements tell you that you need to keep backups for 7 days. You can specify 7 here, so for a week, and any backups starting from the last recoverable backup, any backups older than 7 days will automatically get rolled from CSM and from the hardware. Other option to mention is on the H1R1. This is your recovery option. You can actually do that through no copy or a full background copy. So if your recovery volumes are actually space efficient volumes, you probably want to stick with no copy. Otherwise, it'll take up the backend space of the space efficient. Otherwise, you may want to, if you don't have space efficient, you may want to turn that off and it'll do a full background copy. However, note that if you do a no copy, we do have an initiate background copy command that will let you go and start the background copy if you want to harden it on the R1 volumes. All right, so with that said, with those properties, I just want to make it clear that we do highly recommend you set the retention period. Now, the hardware itself will automatically roll hardware in order to free up capacity to allow for new backups. So if you set your capacity your backup capacity on the volumes too low to meet your service level agreements, what will happen is you may not end up with the number of backups you want because the hardware will automatically roll it. What that shows as is one of these backups may be recoverable, but then automatically goes, at some point it will go unrecoverable. Maybe when you're creating a new backup, maybe because of another session, maybe you're using a pool for safeguarded that are the same as some of your space efficient volumes, and the space efficient takes up some of the space. You may end up with an unrecoverable backup. Now CSM will show you that unrecoverable backup. We won't automatically completely roll the whole thing because some volumes may still be valid, some won't. However, as a whole, the backup's not recoverable, so we will not allow you to recover to it. But just keep aware, in order to meet your service level agreements, you really want a combination of the right backup capacity, the right retention setting, and your properties for SGC1, and your schedule should accommodate, so that make sure that your schedule plus your retention creates the backups you want for your service level agreements, and that number of backups is supported by the amount of backup capacity you have defined. All right. I want to show you that you can actually view the backups here, or the volumes in the backup. If you click on the backup time, pop up a little menu, and it'll show you the volumes that were part of that backup, as well as their state. So if you did have a backup that rolled, you can click on this. You can see all the volumes that are in it, and the ones that rolled would have an error message next to them. All right. So now we can show you that it's also possible to manually expire backups. So we've talked about automatically rolling. We've talked about retention. Or you can actually manually expire backups as well. If you clicked on, maybe I went too fast, session actions commands expire backup, it pops up a wizard. And when you select one, it's that backup and all older backups will be deleted. So, and the way we show that is we highlight all the ones that will be deleted by the one you select. So if you select that one, you'll see that 200 get deleted, that one deleted, etc. So I select that, I say yes, and it's going to actually tell me that 2 backups will be expired. I click yes, and now they have been removed from the hardware. All right, recovering now. Commands, recover backup, pops up a wizard there. In this case, because I just expired some, I only have 1 recoverable backup, so that's all that shows up here. I'm going to select that, I'm going to say yes, and now that backup is getting applied to all the R1 volumes in the session. Completed. Session now went to a target available state, so R1 is available to use, so you can do your forensics, you can use that data. I can go to the Recover Backup Info tab and see the individual volumes, which ones were recovered to, and the results as well. And then as soon as it's done, we also kick off progress. So I had no copy set, so this progress shouldn't move unless you're writing stuff and it starts moving anything. But you can see that if I do a command initiate background copy, that progress will start to move as the background copy hardens the data onto the R1 volume. All right, what else to show you? So now I have a recovery backup relationship. You can see that it's already started the background copy, 9%, 5%, 10%. What happens? Oh, I want to free that space. Background copy is not done. I can issue the terminate H1R1. And terminate H1R1 will leave the backups that you have defined, but we'll terminate the H1R1 recovery relationships. So now those are gone, back and protected. Those are space sufficient R1s. Those got freed up, and I am free to continue to do backups. So that is one way to clean out the recovery relationships if you want to free out some space. And then lastly, I can actually terminate the whole session. Terminate will remove any recovery relationships and then also remove all the backups and put the session back into a defined state. All right. And the last thing I want to show you here about safeguarded copies is that it can be used in more complex environments. You might just not have a set of volumes you want to back up. You might be the remote, you may want to back up the target of a global mirror relationship, for example. So let me show you that. All right, so I'm going to show you that, but I'm going to create a task to do it. I'm going to say backup remote. I'm going to set it 2 hours is good. I'll leave this 2-hour schedule. Create an action. My first action is say I'm going to do this against my global mirror session. Choose that. I'm going to issue a suspend. Now the suspend command is going to do a pause with consistency on global mirror, making the secondaries consistent. I'm going to add a wait for action. Make sure for the global mirror I'm waiting till it's a suspended state. And then once it's a suspended state, I can then do find my safeguarded copy session and do a backup. And then once the backup's complete, I can have that AK GM session restarted with the start H1 H2 command. You can see here it does that suspend, waits for suspended, backup, start H1 H2. All in a single schedule. Defined, finish. Now I have backup, I spelled it wrong, but backup remote over here. I can run it manually. I can run it through the CLI as I mentioned in one of the previous slides, or I can enable it to run on a schedule. So that provides the ability to integrate safeguarded copy in a more complex environment. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I hope you, in this video, I hope you enjoy some of the new features of 6.2.3. Take advantage of it. Here's some quick links, and thank you for your time.